Welcome to the London Horror Movie Club. I'm horror writer Lauren Jane Barnett.
And I'm Chris Sapikowski, Lauren's older brother, and I've been watching horror movies since I was 8.
Join us as we talk about the wild, weird, and wonderful horror films set in England's eerie capital.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. We're glad to be joined today by three guys who are up and coming and working in the independent horror scene in the UK. We have Peter Tilley, the actor, Kemal Yildirim, a director and cinematographer in a bunch of movies, and we have Alexander Staunton-Hill, who wrote the movie that we're going to talk about today. But I wanted to thank you guys for joining us and welcome.
Thank you very much for having us. It's really appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah. So Peter, you reached out to me, and we were talking about your movie, The Foreboding, Fractured. You guys have all worked on, and you guys have been entered into Horror on Sea Festival. I think that's in February, if I'm not mistaken.
January.
Coming up. January. I'm sorry, January. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Like a little bit of project things that you're looking forward to with that?
Questions do you make?
Well, we could go all three. I'm sorry. I went left to right. So I'm going with Peter first.
Yeah, firstly, it's really brilliant news that we've managed to get into the Horror and Sea Film Festival, because that will be the world premiere of the film, the first ever time that people are going to be watching it. And Horror and Sea just has a fantastic audience behind it. Like, there's such an atmosphere there. Obviously, loads of films screening at that festival over 2 weekends, and what's brilliant is that we've managed to get a prime time slot. The film is shown at 5:30 on a Saturday afternoon, which is brilliant. So yeah, we're really excited about it.
So how did this film come into being? Tell us a little bit about it, because I know that you all must have met outside of this film and then decided to do it together.
It's all Peter's fault.
Yeah, blame me. Yeah, I've always loved teen horror stories. I've always wanted to do my own take on it. So I came to Alex sort of the end of June time this year. And I went to him, I was like, "Hey mate, do you fancy writing a script? I've got an idea." And then you took it on. And The Foreboding was quickly written, as it was once known as just The Foreboding, before the title change. And the script came back pretty quickly. Because of that, we had a deadline of needing to get this film made for the Horror and Sea submission, which was September. So this whole process has been pretty insane, having to get it done in start of July to start of September, I suppose.
Yeah.
But it's a fantastic script. I'm really, really pleased with what Alex came up with. He's just done a brilliant job with it. And then I met Kemal on another film, Tales from the Great War. We met there together. We was actors in that film. And I just knew what a brilliant talent he was. And we managed to thankfully get Kemal on board to direct this film and edit the film and do the cinematography on it as well, which has just been absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, they gave me about 2.5 weeks notice before we started filming. It was a crazy 2.5 week period of kind of the three of us putting our heads together, thinking how we're going to get this done. I know these guys did a few weeks before that, trying to get the production. They did all the casting, they did all those aspects, but it was a very short time span to get it to the shoot. And to be honest, working with these two guys has just been phenomenal. Like, they're two young talents for the future, and everything that I needed as a director, they made sure it was there in place. They made sure that all the character breakdowns there, the casting was done perfectly. The location was amazing that we had. We had this amazing rural Sussex farm that we could film on, and there was just loads of land that we could use, and outbuildings and all sorts of different things that we could use. So as a production, these two guys just kind of come together and really made it, it probably raised the film more than what it should be, if that makes sense. Because working on a low budget film, I know the budget, Peter, did go over a little bit, but the the process of trying to make a low budget film is always difficult, and location unless you get that right, it can be quite difficult. And these two kind of pulled it out of the bag because they got a fantastic location. Another film has been shot there that's done quite well. So Peter will probably tell you about that.
Oh,
Well, I'm curious to know, before we get into that, and I do want to know that film, but with such a short period of time between, you said June, July, and then submission has to be in September. What are the biggest obstacles? You said location's a big obstacle because if you don't have the right locations there, but what obstacles did you guys not think of kind of beforehand, or maybe you did, but what was the biggest obstacles that you faced going forward in a 4 or 5 month period?
I mean, for us as UK filmmakers, we should know better than filming something outdoors. The weather's never going to play. And actually, shooting this film, I literally came off of Alex Churchyard's Python and went straight to the set of this film. And on that set, we had a lot of weather issues. And on this set, it got worse. We had wind that you wouldn't believe, rain that you would not believe. It was torrential rain for the whole of the time that we were there. And we only had 2.5 days to actually film a 26-minute film. So we knew it was going to be long days. We knew it was going to be very, very long going, but we had a lot of issues with weather. Like, that's something that as UK filmmakers, we're obviously naive. We want to make films and nothing's going to stop us, even though the UK's probably got the worst weather to make a film in, because you could get maybe about 5 different weather patterns in the space of, which we did in the space of about half a day. So it was mad. Yeah, the weather we never really took into account, and that really, I mean, it was in August, so we assumed that it was going to be quite sunny, but obviously, you know, with everything going on with climate change and all the rest of it, the weather patterns was just all over the place, and it was torrential rain for pretty much predominantly 95% of the shoot.
I mean, yeah, for the weather, we were kind of super unlucky because I think it was literally since you come off Python, I think it was literally during that week we had a storm come in and we got caught right in the middle of it.
Yeah.
So that was always interesting. I mean, it added for the atmosphere, definitely, you know. Cold rain definitely helped me slick my hair back a bit more because my hair was a lot longer. It kept getting in my face. It was really annoying. So I was quite thankful for the rain in that regard. But yeah, I mean, we had the issue of generators as well. So we had one generator that we were given, and I was given and I was told that the power outage was enough. We plugged it all in, took it as far out into the woods as we could so that sound could really pick it up. And about 5 seconds from turning it on, it started flashing red. And I know when you start smelling burning, that means either run or turn it off. And we're in a forest, so really it's turn it off, isn't it? So we kind of had that issue, but luckily one of our actresses, Eve Catherine Oliver, just built this massive campfire, and it was absolutely brilliant. It lit the whole scene. So that was absolutely amazing. We did get a second generator, like on the night we basically figured out that we could hire one from about half an hour away or something. Got that back. And then on the last day of our shoot, we had another issue with the generator because it was pouring rain. It somehow got into the tank and diluted the petrol. So the 4 hours of filming that we're meant to have with lighting basically turned into an hour. Like, I mean, I wish I was exaggerating, but it was like, it cut our time down really, really short. And that wasn't something that I really took into consideration. I kind of just went into it being like, oh, a generator is a generator, so it'll do, you know, what it has to do. Nope, it really didn't.
I suppose it's one of those things that you can never really take into account. You know, on all films, and you know, as you can tell, I've been around for a few years, and I've worked on many films, and you know, there's always technical issues that come up, and always production issues that come up. But it takes a real team kind of unity to kind of get beyond that, because sometimes those things can cripple a production. But we all really kind of came together. I mean, the cast were pretty much crew. They were helping us as well. They're carrying whatever they could. You know, everybody was just so beyond, you know, behind the project and behind these two wonderful producers that they really wanted to get the film done. and we all worked together to get it done. And what we actually did was actually change the adversity into a positive, because the camp scene actually looked better. Because if I would have lit it, I would have lit it all elaborately, you know, like as most cinematographers do, you know, I would have went overboard. But just that campfire and just, I think we had some mini torches that we used as well, which I've never done in film before. So it was the first. It was really quite nice to kind of work on that kind of very intimate, you know, intimate moment, knowing that everything could go wrong, but everyone just kind of stepped up. And Eve is, you know, she should be a scout leader because she's amazing. She literally built the biggest bonfire I've ever seen. It gave me so much light that I could have seen with. So, you know, it's, you know, those things that I love about independent film, because we all just kind of come together and make it work. And you know, that's what keeps us coming back to make films. It's that kind of ambience that you get on an indie film.
I mean, to be fair, just because of the lighting, when you look at the campfire scene, it's actually just such a lovely scene now. Because, like you said, if you had all that elaborate lighting, it might not be as effective. But just the sort of like, I don't know, it's like the warmth of the campfire, you know? You can just feel it. Well, I mean, we literally did feel it with embers, like, you know, flying out and hitting us on the forehead.
There was a few tears streaming down our eyes.
Yeah, you were warm. At least you were warm. You know, embers will keep you warm.
Yeah, I mean, I'm quite lucky, you know, because I'm a redhead. It means, you know, I was born in the fire, so it doesn't affect me.
I love that. That should be a new
Oh,
motto.
man. All right, so if I don't forget, what was the film that was shot on the same location in Suffolk that you had mentioned before?
So Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. That was
Oh,
yeah, that was kind of, I think there's some sections of that that was filmed there.
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, with the location that we filmed on, we got really lucky because it was proving really difficult to find a location, and we actually secured this location 1 week before we was filming. It was that
oh
close.
wow.
So we got really, really lucky, to be honest. And to be honest, the location that we got was absolutely perfect. It just matched up exactly to what Alex detailed and wrote about this location in the script. So it's like, you know, a long journey to get the location, but the one that we managed to get, it was all worth it because it just worked perfectly.
It was probably the most accurate representation of the location that we needed.
Yeah.
Like it just fit. I mean, there might have been like one or two changes I made to the script, but other than that, like it was, to be fair, it was a stunning location. You know, I mean, you're out in the middle of nowhere, so you really are like, you know, kind of just embracing nature, I suppose.
So out of curiosity then, did that mean there were quite a few challenges in terms of building scenes and making sure you physically could bring in camera, sound, etc., because it was so rural? And do you want to talk a bit about like how you improvise with that, what you're used to?
Yeah, it was very difficult. I mean, it was difficult in the sense that it was quite a rural place to try and actually find it and get any service there. You know, I know you know the typical horror thing where you don't have any service. We literally had no service when we were in that place. It was, you know, if we sent a message, it would, you know, if we got a message, it would arrive as soon as we left. You know, so it was awful trying to get any kind of service there. So if we were trying to communicate with each other, we were down to walkie-talkies, which only had a certain range. So trying to get everybody in position and where we needed to be was a bit of a challenge, but Pete and Alex kind of already had that in plan. They already had that in their head. So majority of the time it went really smoothly. Like I can't really complain as the director and cinematographer. I had everything up there that, you know, really they had the headache. I just had to try and make sure I filmed it and got it all shot properly. But you know, so they had the production headache of actually trying to organize all this, and they kind of took that on board and run away with it really, because it, as hard as that shoot was in terms of logistics and you know, weather and whatever else, generators dying on you, it didn't feel that way, because it felt that even though it was a tough shoot, everybody was kind of behind it, and these two kind of really kept everyone going, and it was just it was, for me, it was a massively enjoyable experience, even though I fell over in mud and all the rest. You know, it was, you know, it's what I love to do, so they kind of created an environment where it was just really easy for us to all work together.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely on the last night was sort of our biggest challenge. So when we're in the in like the shed, because we had like this quite a big final scene, And obviously because of the generators, it meant that we kind of had to cut out a ton of these things. So myself, Kemal, and Peter all went into the shed, almost like, what the hell are we gonna do, sort of thing. And it's the first time in my sort of film career where I've actually like squatted down in the middle of a room and was just like, what the hell, essentially. But it was really, really, really good because we were, I think, well, to me it felt like half an hour. But the way Peter kind of said it to me, it was more like 5 minutes, and then it was like, okay, cool, we know what to do. So we got all the cast in, basically walked through it as best we can. Bear in mind, we were, really, really, really tired at that point.
Yeah, I think this must have been like got to 5 a.m. We did have to cut out some material for the film because it would have been longer. So that's why we've come away with 26-minute short film, which is still good. I'm still happy with that considering the time we had. But yeah, Alex had to make those changes to the script and decide what to cut out and that because time was against us. But I think we've still walked away with a really good product.
Oh man, I'm happy with it. Yeah,
like with the generator on the first night with that issue, and then lighting the campfire. I think it's all in a way been blessings in disguise, really, because I think it's just turns out that much better, to be honest.
So I'm curious, Peter, you had the thought originally of this movie, right? Of this story. And how do you, when you look back on it now, and I know you're very happy with the way that it turned out, you're excited for everyone to see it, but how kind of true to what your original thought was to the end product and just in the movie making, I know everybody can have that same thought. You write a certain way, Alex, and then Kemal, you're directing it. So you have this thought before you start, but like as the person who kind of had the idea of the story at first, Peter, how accurate did it stay to your original thought, the end product?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Alex come up really with the whole, film, the whole idea. I simply went to him and I was like, I want to make a teen horror flick, sort of in the woods, that setting of like, sort of student,
Okay.
that vibe to it. I left it with Alex, gave him the deadline. I was like, crack on with it, mate. Enjoy. And then, he really just accomplished it because he'd come back with such a fantastic script. I think I received it out early hours in the morning.
It was very, very
into my
early,
inbox. Woke up and it was there sitting. So I was like, great, have a nice coffee. Let's see what it's about. And yeah, it was just absolutely brilliant. But I mean, this film has turned into something so much bigger than I originally thought. To be honest, that because of the deadline we had, I never would have ever thought that we would accomplish something as big as we have done in such little amount of time. It still surprised me to this day, to be honest. I can't quite believe we've managed to get it done, to be honest. No one, it's madness. This whole process has just been madness. It's all been really rushed, really quick. But I think because of the deadline we had, that dedication we had has got us to the point we are at now. If we did not have that, might have walked away with a different product, to be honest.
And from my perspective, coming on reading the script, that's actually because originally when Peter contacted me, I thought he just wanted me to do the cinematography on the film. I didn't realize he wanted me to direct as well. So when he said, no, we're thinking about you directing it as well, and I read the script, I was like, I'll do it because the script is so strong. Because a film will fall if the script isn't good enough. If there's not a strong enough story there and a script there and characters, it could end up not being so good. But when I read the script, Alex kind of created this mythos and atmosphere of this kind of forest that they go into, that it's almost like another character in the film. And I found it very interesting the way that these characters kind of interacted with each other, and there was a real freshness and a rawness. It felt young, and I come at it from someone who hasn't been that young for a while. So I thought there was a freshness to it. I thought there was a real freshness to the characters, and and you could look at it on the basis of it and go, oh, this is going to be quite atypical of a teen horror flick, but it kind of isn't, because there's a kind of strength of characters within there that you can tell that there's a real bond between these four characters, and then what happens slowly is Boris dismantles that, and it's just a very clever little script, and the mythos that he created was really good, and the script was strong. So kudos to Alex for creating it, because it is a great script, and hopefully the feature length version will be even better, you know, if that ever happens one day, because there is a lot of story to tell there, and there's a lot of real meat that we haven't really established in the short, because you can't really tell that much within a short story. We have to truncate that story to be a kind of have that beginning, middle, and end in order to be able to tell that short story. And we didn't really manage, because there was so much material there, we didn't really manage to tell it all, because originally it was going to be about 45 minutes and we only managed to shoot the 26-minute that we see at the end of the film. And we did that, like Alex said, and Peter said, that there was a moment of absolute stress where the project could have fell apart, and the three of us had to really come together. And it shows that, you know, that there's definitely a spark between the three of us, the way that we work together, because I've been in situations like that before, when you are in that creative dilemma where a writer has to tear his work apart and rebuild it back there and then. And most of the time that usually ends up with the writer going, right, I've had enough of this, walking away, because we destroyed his story, essentially, with Tori's story. And I knew when I was saying that to him, saying we need to cut some material out, so we need to rejig this story a bit, a lesser writer would have walked, but Alex didn't. And Alex kind of created, you know, he looked at the story, because it's so mapped out in his head. He kind of looked at the story, and we worked together. Well, let's take this out, let's take that out, and put this together, and make the end scene, the big pivotal scene, a little bit more tighter and concise for the short story. It ended up making that short story better because of what he did. But again, it's, you know, testament to these guys to be able to do that, because I know how difficult it is, because I write as well, and trying to then go into your work and then going, right, just dismantle it all and then rebuild it again on the spot when we've got 5 minutes to do it, when we've got cast and crew outside waiting to film. It's a very difficult process, and he did that really well. Peter, as a producer, kind of made that then come together and make it work, you know. And the three of us worked really hard on that particular, in those 5 minutes. I say we probably did most of our work in that 5 minutes when we were under that much pressure. And I think we come out with something, you know, quite strong. And it's definitely brilliant calling card for the two producers that are, you know, their first producing job. And, you know, they're a testament to what actors should be doing going forward, is creating their own material. Because, you know, as a you know, as a filmmaker that's, you know, had quite a bit of experience and done quite a few different things, from short films to features, and also started out as an actor, you kind of need to start creating your own material in order to get material out there. And these guys have done that. It's superb.
So, Alex,
awesome.
then can I ask you to, I can't believe I've waited this long to ask this question, but tell us, like, what's the heart of the story? And then, because Kemal mentioned it, do you think you would turn it into something else for a feature length?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose for me, whenever I'm writing anything, I'm all about character and sort of making sure that the world that they are in is basically weaved together. I think that's one of the most interesting ways to make a script. So when Peter basically said he wanted a horror, which, by the way, I don't really write horror at all. This is sort of my first attempt at sort of really go more into the region, because I've kind of like tiptoed in it before and then gone more like sciencey, but this time I was like, you know what, yeah, just full send it. But yeah, I think when you really look at the story, you will be focusing more on the characters and their relationships, because sort of I wrote this shortly after I suppose it would have been about 2 years after I left uni now.
Yeah.
So kind of having these university students in their first year, I can still recall when I was in first year. So there are these elements of either something that I've generally felt whilst I was at uni, or something that a mate of mine has felt, or something like that. That makes these characters feel, at least to me, far more real, and actually get that connection across. So yeah, for me, that's the heart of the story, besides, you know, all the other weird stuff. I would happily make a feature. I mean, we've discussed it, we've sort of dabbled with the idea of going forward with one. But really it's just kind of seeing what people think of the short. If they really like it, then I'd be more than happy to, you know, turn it into a full feature and just really, really run with it, because I personally, I love the world that's been built, and I'd love to expand on it a bit more.
Would you mind telling us a little bit more about, say, the setup of the characters in the world that they're in? Is it that they're going on a trip together? What's happening?
Yeah, so they kind of essentially go on like this little trip together because it's the end of their first year. Um, and they've all kind of had, their different experiences, and they're this like their prime group. So they go off into the woods just to kind of have like a sort of nice chill out, like after all their exams and stuff like that. Um, and just because of the situation they find themselves in, it just makes that sort of more wholesome moments mean a lot more, because there's definitely a halfway point where it goes from 0 to 100 really, really quick. Yeah, I mean, that's all I can really say without spoiling it. Being very careful.
Yeah, myself and Alex, we play the two guy characters in the film. I'm playing Aaron, and then Alex has taken on the role of Connor because also adding more work for Alex as well. When I went to him saying, "Can you write a script?" I also mentioned to him, "I'd like you to be in the film as well. I want you to be one of the characters." Just because Alex is a good mate of mine, I wanted that opportunity for us to act alongside each other as well. Because we was on another film together, but we never got the opportunity to actually be in the same scene or share that together. So again, even more so, I wanted this as an opportunity as well to actually act opposite Alex, and he just done a fantastic job with everything, to be honest, with the acting and the writing and taking all these challenges on. He just absolutely smashed it.
That's great. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing it. I will always watch any movie where younger people, and especially as they get older, and now that I have teens, and it's kind of weird to say, but I'll always take the opportunity to watch teens in a rural setting getting something happening to them. Like I've liked it since the Friday the 13th movies. I've that's the stereotypical, like the slasher films and stuff. But like I always, because I find it to be, it's a good chance to just have scares. You're in the dark, you're in an unsettling environment, no matter if you're a camper or not. You're in an environment that you're not used to. Can't really make a whole horror movie in a dorm room, like when there's 50 people in a certain hallway. So I'm curious to know, like, and I love when I talk with people in this world, because especially in the indie horror movie, and you guys have touched on it, where you're dabbling in, well, you're not dabbling, you're kind of elbows deep in everything. The production side, you're acting in it, you're writing it, you're now adjusting your scripts, you're looking at the way to light things. Do you just hate production at this point? Because no one's ever said it's just great. I write my checks and everything's perfect. Like, does that scare you when you're looking at, like, I'm going to do a feature film and you're like, well, wait a minute, I'm going to have this much more production involved in it. I'll happily write all day.
I have nightmares every night thinking about it. But to be honest, you know what? At the same time, what I think, to be honest, for what we have produced and made, and we done that in such a little amount of time. I think if we're making something like this together, and I think we're an absolute dream team. I think we just gel and work so well together. I'm so confident in what we can do going forward if that feature gets made, to be honest.
Very cool.
I mean, I must be a sadist because I love production. I've been doing it since I was like 15 years old, like on a very amateur level, and I've kind of just kept kind of raising that bar as much as I can. And for me, it's my happy place. Being on set is actually my happy place. It's where you'll find me the most happiest. And even when you're pulling your hair out and I don't have any left, so that it is stressful. It's very stressful, but that's where you see, for me, that's where you see people really coming together. And I'm not making filmmaking sound anything more important than what it is. It is a creative endeavor, so there's much more important things out there in the world, but you really see the character of people when you're working on independent film. People that come together, people that really really support one another and want to get something made. And and I'm not saying it's all clean sailing and people don't fall out and there's not little intricacies and pockets of negativity or whatever, because there is. But at the same time, I've met some of the best people I've ever met on a film set, and that kind of environment when you have to be creative in a pressure cooker situation, for me, is probably one of the most exciting things that you can do, because your brain has to work a million miles an hour, and if you're working with the right mindset, the only thing you worry about is what's happening in front of that screen. And that, for me, I'm a little bit obsessive like that when it comes to making film. That for me, what's happening in front of the screen and what's happening behind the scenes is nothing. I kind of don't even look back. I don't care. If people are hating each other, fine, get on with it. I'm just concentrating on what's going on in front of that screen. And it's seeing it all come together, and you know, Alex and Peter, they're having to, you know, do these really intense acting scenes, and 2 seconds ago we were trying to figure out whether we were going to get to finish the film. But then seeing it come alive and these creatives just do that, and me being able to kind of light it and direct it in a way that it happens, it's just an exciting thing. It's really exciting. And I love production, absolutely love production. For me, pre-production and production are the most exciting parts. The editing, when you have to deal with the problems of what happened on set, is then sometimes a bit of a headache.
I mean, looking at production as an actor is always better, because you just go on set, you say your lines, and you know, then for the rest of the day you sit on your backside and do nothing until they go, right, we need you again. So kind of going about it in a completely different way of, you know, trying to make sure everything is sort of okay, really brought in the whole thing of trust the process, because Jesus, I had to trust something. I mean, I personally enjoyed the production side of it. It was really, really cool. Because yeah, it's like Kemal said, even though you're in such a stressful environment, you do really, I kind of get a bit of a thrill out of it, you know, a bit of a thrill seeker. Kind of just like, oh yeah, give me the most stressed environment and I'll probably work my little butt off.
I mean, to be honest, like the challenges we faced, and we did come across quite a few, it was a really fun set to be on. Like, we had a brilliant team behind us, backing us. The location we was at was really cool. So bringing these scenes to life was just absolutely amazing. But I mean, the team made it. If we did not have that team by our side, it would have been really problematic, to be honest, even more so than those issues become of us. But we just worked well as a team, and we just got all through it together, to be honest. I mean, it's obviously my first time, because I'm used to, obviously, mainly as an actor, the acting aspect to it, coming on now as a producer, having that mindset, making sure everyone's okay on set and everything like that, as well as all of these lines in my head, then having to go in the scene and do that was definitely a challenge. But you know, we done it, and I'm happy the way it's worked out. I couldn't be happier, to be honest.
I was told something along, like back when I was in college, I was told, you know, there was a phrase called, you know, the most fun you never want to have again. And in a situation of like, these were horrible, you know, like it was, you know, fraternity stuff. And it's like, it's things you look back and you're like, these are bad stories, but it was like the most fun you ever had. Right. And it was like, would I put myself through it again now? Probably not. But I can look back and be like, hey, you get through this, or you did this, and we got through this. It kind of sounds like that, like that whole experience brought you guys even closer together, like as you move forward in the industry, and just being able to say like, man, we remember when we did this, you know, like 10, you know, something will come up and you're like, well, that's nothing like when, you know, the generator went red and we didn't know what to do. Like, you know, it's just, those things will always be with you and you kind of learn from that. So it's really cool to hear that side of the story. So Horror on Sea Film Festival, I've heard this from different people, and Lauren as well. And what is the game after Horror on Sea? Like, what is so with a short film, it gets premiered there, and then how do people like I see it? Like over in the United States, I'm not going to be at Horror on Sea. Like, how does that process go into it, or does that go to a distributor at that point, and you try to get it onto one of the streaming platforms, or try to get it into like a Blu-ray situation? How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be doing, you know, a festival run, obviously, starting with Horror and Sea. We've submitted it into some other festivals as well, and we'll be looking to get it abroad, overseas, obviously, doing a bit of a festival run. Anything beyond that, we're still figuring out at the moment. But obviously, we'd like to get it out there as much as we possibly can.
Yeah.
There might just be some things in the way of would prevent us from having distribution.
Yeah, there's a couple of agreements we had to sort of make because there was this, an artist's song who I really, really, really wanted for the opening, just because it's an awesome song, but also the artist is insane. Estero, I don't know if any of you know who she is, but her music is so cool. So literally, because of how low budget it was essentially the case of, would you mind if we use your song? And the agreement that we came to was, as long as it's not being distributed, we can use the song. If it starts getting distributed, we'll have to make an original one, which, to be fair, isn't out of the realm of out of the possibility factor at all, considering myself and another artist basically just made the soundtrack for this in about 2 days, like what, a week ago, 2 weeks ago, something like that. So if we had to make an original song, it wouldn't be that difficult.
Yeah. I mean, with short films, it's a little bit harder to reach a kind of more like streaming sites and whatever, because it is a short film, and we can put it on Amazon, we can put it on places like that. But really, I think it's for me, it's probably a really good calling card for the two producers that produced it, and then using that as a launching pad to then create feature films, because feature films is really where you get a wider audience. But I mean, eventually, I'm sure it'll end up somewhere for viewers. We hope, that the viewers overseas could watch it. But I mean, watch your space, because you don't know what we're going to create after this. We're hopefully going to expand upon some, worlds and try and create more stories.
Yeah, no, that's great. I always laugh because when I talk with Lauren, she'll be in this, and a lot of those are, I don't want to mess up the phrasing of this, but they're short films, but then they're pieces of a bigger film. So like, yes, thank you. We grew up together. She knows my vocabulary is stuck at second grade, but yeah. So you're able to see those, and then when it's shorter films, like I'll talk with you guys, and like I really want to see this film. Unfortunately, being here, I won't be at Horror on Sea. So I know if other people are looking forward to the same thing, I'm actually already thinking of like, yes, you got to do the full feature length. Like it sounds great. Like you've gotten this far. Like hopefully there's this tremendous groundswell of support for it where you're like, let's do it. Just kind of gives you that push that's needed. So just was curious about that.
Yeah, that's definitely a factor as well. It's if we have the support, if we have the audience wanting more, then there's even more of a guarantee that we'll make that feature. Because like I said, we've already had that conversation, and all three of us, we do want to make one. It's just sort of figuring out the logistics of it alongside, would the audience want to see this? Because I know personally for me, if I was going to be making a feature, I would be having to change it in a way so that it feels fresh, because I wouldn't want to make the exact same thing. And I'm pretty sure the audience, if they've already seen the short, they don't want to like just see an extension. They actually want to see, bigger and better,
And so obviously this is a horror film we've been talking about. I know you all have worked in other things, but as we're a horror film podcast, I always like to ask, were there any horror films that either got you really interested in doing a horror, maybe they gave you the idea, Peter, or any things that excite you as horror films in what you do for your daily jobs?
Oh, the list of horror films that I love. Oh, it's just too many. Too many. I'm a huge fan of folklore horror myself. I'm a big folklore horror fan. And also ghost stories, the ghost stories for Christmas that were told during that made during the 70s. Those kind of, they're really my inspiration as a filmmaker myself. And that's what I loved about Alex's script, going back to the script again, is that there were elements of folklore in there, because there was certain kind of, as soon as you cross thresholds, you then go into a different world, and it's rural, and there's almost a different kind of way of life, within that rural life that really intrigued me about the script. So trying to answer your question on what films inspire me, so many, but the folklore films like Blood on Satan's Claw and those kind of Wicker Man and films like that really are my you know, what inspired me as a kid to really want to get into film was those kind of films. And, you know, I love the films of Amicus, and obviously I grew up watching Amicus and horror, you know, Hammer horror and stuff like that. But I think it was probably the 70s TV that kind of then translated to the 80s when I was kind of a kid, that I was watching reruns of the 70s stuff that really inspired me. And I think that's quite a generational thing, that these guys will probably be inspired by the 90s and Scream and that kind of stuff that inspired them to want to do what they want to do. And, you know, so for me, it was a generational thing, from a kind of cast over from the 70s, 60s and 70s that bled into the 80s.
And how about you two?
I quite like survival horror. I think, you know, obviously coming to Alex with the idea for a teen horror flick, essentially, you know, like Friday the 13th and those sort of stories, you find these characters in a situation which most of them get killed off and hardly any of them survive. And I just like...
No one survives in Friday the 13th Part
Yeah.
1. Yeah, but yeah, no, I think, yeah, I'm a big horror fan. I never used to like horror, to be honest. I remember, I think I was like 11 years old, something like that. I think my first horror film I watched was Jeepers Creepers, and at the time I was absolutely terrified by it. And then now I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, I think with the indie film scene, majority of it seems to be horror, at least from what I've experienced. And to be honest, they're such great fun to make. You can just have so much fun with it. It can go absolutely in any direction, which again I've certainly experienced. But yeah, I think it's just endless opportunities with horror, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm gonna, this is gonna be controversial, I think. I'm not actually a massive horror fan.
You're on
I know.
That's okay. That's okay.
I'll just leave now, yeah. I mean, to be fair, there's like, you know, there's the obvious ones, like Alien. Alien to me is still like one of the greatest films ever created. I think it's so cool. I think the very first thing I ever watched, and I think this is a very out of pocket one, but it was Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
Nice.
So I remember watching that when I was younger, because I thought it was literally just about these cool clowns from outer space. I was very wrong. But I think when it like kind of came to this film, because it's like Kemal kind of said when I like met him for like the third time on a Zoom or something. He was like, "Oh, you've got a very old soul," and I was like, "Well, that would explain why I've been watching an awful lot of 60s and 70s horror, trying to go, okay, what works there? How can we bring that into the sort of modern age without it, you know, being all cliched and so that, because I'm a stickler for stuff like that, you know. There's some cliches that work, and there's somewhere I'm like, please don't do it again, because it's been done 5,000 times now, so just stop. I think one of the biggest helps for me actually is it's a game that we've both played, and it was The Quarry, which was essentially like sort of 70s or 80s inspired, and put all these sort of, well, they're not really kids, are they? They're like young adults, yeah. Just into, you know, a sort of slasher environment, but they flipped on its head. And that's sort of where I went, okay, cool. I think I know exactly how I want to proceed with making a horror film, so that way it's staying true to what a horror film is, but giving it a sort of my own little spin on it.
I think that's what's so cool about the creative process that you guys go through too, is or just filmmakers in general, is you're taking pieces. All three of you kind of grew up in different ways with horror films. You know, some people are, Lauren and I were allowed to watch anything that we wanted to watch, as long as there wasn't a lot of nudity in it. So like that was like our parents' like one red line. It was like, oh yeah, you want to watch Psycho? Great. You want to watch? And we're like, I watched Nightmare on Elm Street when it came out as a VHS to rent. You know, like it was, but the kid who was babysitting us, I still remember, it looks like Judd Nelson from Breakfast Club. Probably doesn't look like that, but that's what he looked like in my memory. Like he was the cool kid in the neighborhood. They had him watch this. He was like, "You're gonna watch Nightmare on Elm Street," and I was like 6. I was like, "What the hell? This is awesome!" And it just, you know, but you can take what you've learned and what you like, and you can kind of mold it into what you want to show people. Like you're taking, those are your influences, and I always find that really cool. Is because what can happen with a collaboration like that? I mean, you said Jeepers Creepers. was one of your first movies that you watched. I think I went on a date to see Jeepers Creepers. So it shows you like I like that movie as well, but it shows you like I can like that movie and we're not the same age. You know, like we both got something from that movie. I mean, Alien, another one is like I just showed my son Alien, and then we had to proceed and buy the other Aliens because he liked that one so much, and then he drastically liked each one else less. So he still goes back to the first one. But it's very cool because it's something that when they're done right, or if you can build a story, they can last a long time, even if they get dated. You know, even if you're like, wow, that's a 70s movie, but you can still be like, I really enjoyed it. It was just very 70s.
Alien and Aliens 100% have like stood the test of time. I still think Aliens is better than Alien. I pretend
Aliens is
3 and 4 don't exist.
Same.
Good. I'm glad we're on the same page.
3 is underrated. 3 is massively underrated.
Ah.
Oh, interesting.
Director's cut of, because it's a David Fincher film. I'm a huge Fincher fan. So if you look at the original cut, David Fincher's original cut, that was an interesting take on Alien.
All I remember is damn, what's his name? We're both Doctor Who nerds. Oh, what's his name? Eighth Doctor. Paul McGann.
Yeah.
He was in it, which was like one of the main reasons why I wanted to watch the third one. And I was very confused because he had shorter hair. And I was like, wait, where is he? Because I was so used to him with long curly hair. So I was like, where the hell is this man? What's going on?
But the concept of putting it on a prison in outer space was just, I thought, was just an amazing concept. And I think Fincher had quite a lot of clashes with the studios and trying to change what he was trying to do, and that usual story about executives getting involved, etc. But if you actually look at his director's cut, which you can get, it's a very interesting story and kind of progresses the Alien saga quite well. But I actually think Alien 1 is better than Aliens, personally. Because Aliens is an action film, really. Alien is a ghost story in space. So a haunted house story in space is what it is. So I think Alien is better than Aliens, but hey.
That's right. We can't agree on everything. That's all right.
See, I was going to give you that. And I was going to say, okay, I'm going to take your advice. I'm going to try to find the Fincher cut for Alien 3 and I'll watch it. But don't you dare try to tell me that Halloween 3 is some classic Halloween movie in the Halloween genre of movies, because that has been disappointing since I was 8, and it's still disappointing today. And I made my son watch it, and he was disappointed. And it's something I give to my generations. Keep going on. I want everyone in my family from this point forward to be disappointed in that movie.
That's where I agree with you. I actually like it. I think I don't think it's a Halloween film. I think that's what Carpenter was doing. I think he didn't want to make a continuation of that kind of, he already told his story and he didn't want to continue it. So I think that's what he wanted to do. He wanted to do something different. And I think if you take the Halloween title off it, it's an interesting film. And anything with Tom Atkins in it, I'm watching. He's got an amazing charisma in the film, in Halloween 3. So I actually really like it. What's scarier than you put on a Halloween mask and all of a sudden it's stuck on your face and snakes are coming out of it and you're getting eaten from, as a kid, it scared the life out of me. I didn't put a mask on for at least a year.
That's the thing. I think if you see it as Season of the Witch, it's a good film.
Absolutely, yeah. Well made,
I'm destroying
but if
my brother.
You see it as, and I'm sorry, we're going to argue. I'm going to follow this up real quick. I apologize. See, yes, if you watch it as Season of the Witch, it's a standalone horror movie that I can understand. But if you tell me that I'm going to go watch Top Gun 3 and you show me Iron Eagle, I am now disappointed. They both have planes in them. They can be a standalone film. You cannot throw the name. And I understand that John Carpenter was trying to actually it was almost trying to make like 3 different movies. But I think the story continued in the second one, if I read that correctly, and then the third. Well, then you've already blown it by making the second one. So then you need to continue the story with Mike Myers, who is now, like, still today, I probably had 13 kids dressed as Mike Myers trick-or-treating this year. Yeah, little like kids, like 6th graders. Like, these kids weren't even alive when Jamie Lee Curtis wasn't gray. So, like, they're still watching it, but they don't know which is I'm going to the
Season
Year of the Witch and Season of the Witch. Like, no, I'm not buying it. Sorry.
So
Well,
are you a fan then of the continuation of My Story after Season of the Witch? So do you agree with where they took it?
So I like slasher films, and
Yeah.
so I like some of them. Like, I kind of liked and I won't know all the names. I'm really bad with titles of names. I'm actually surprised I threw out Iron Eagle in my argument there. But
Great.
the Buster Rhymes, when they were doing like the reality TV, when that came out, I thought that was like a smart, because everybody was watching reality TV then, and I kind of liked that thought of it. But as long as it has the Mike Myers in a mask, I don't care. You can kill him every movie. Jason was this perfect example. You killed him 15 times. He still shows up on the streets of New York. Like, it just, lightning hits a metal.
just
Yeah, in
space
space.
outside.
Right. So I like that genre where, like, I don't need a whole lot of backstory when it comes to that kind of genre. To, like, here's a guy, you can't kill him and he's going to get you.
Yeah.
And so
I agree
that
with
was what Halloween was to me.
I 100% agree with you, but that's where Halloween 1 is a masterpiece and the rest are progressively worse and worse and worse because they tried to. I mean, especially don't even talk about Rob Zombie's remakes. They're absolute pile of shit. Sorry about absolute gosh. Trying to, rather than having just the face, just the this presence that was the boogeyman or whatever, and then trying to create this backstory about, he had a bad childhood and he turned into a killer. It was just nonsense for me. I agree with you. I liked Halloween 1 because you didn't know the mystery behind what this person was. It was just a mystery of this killer, and he would not stop killing, and he couldn't be stopped. For me, that was a scary aspect of Halloween, and it is a masterpiece. Halloween 1 is an absolute masterpiece for a reason.
It is. It is one that I will watch every single year at Halloween. I probably watch it 3 times a year, and I love it every time I watched it.
But the rest progressively get worse and worse. And it's same. I mean, Friday the 13th, I wouldn't really call Friday. I know this is quite controversial in the horror scene, but I wouldn't call Friday the 13th Part 1 a masterpiece either. I think it's a well done slasher, and Tom Savini did some of his good early work. But apart from that, I wouldn't really consider it a good film. I think it's just a very generic slasher. If you really want to look at slasher films, for me, the Italian kind of giallo, that's really what I consider proper slasher.
Tenebrae.
Yeah, see, Tenebrae, anything from Mario Bava, Sergio Martini, all these guys that were creating masterpieces in the 80s and 70s. That for me was the proper slashers. And
we got some funny looks from Alex and Peter there, though. You guys want to jump in on this?
I was with you guys, up until you started going into whoever these Italian guys are. I think I might be a bit uneducated on that one.
Young is the word you're looking for. You are younger than all of us.
You could say that. Yeah. Oh,
do not age shame. Do not. You're younger than me too, so I can go right back at you. Do not age shame these guys.
I'm that much younger than you. They were babies. No offense.
all I'm gonna say is, when I've been thinking about it, there's actually 2. Well, I don't know if they'd be classed as horror, but there's 2 like we'll always say that I rewatched so many times. 28 Days Later, which I think is amazing. My dad made me watch that when I was like 4. And how I didn't have nightmares, I don't know. And I don't know if it's actually classed as horror, but Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah, absolutely a horror film.
I would say that's a horror movie.
Anthony Hopkins is like one of the greatest actors going. So seeing him as Hannibal Lecter was, it's perfection. That's a brilliant
chef's kiss.
Chef's kiss, absolutely.
I mean, this is controversial. I actually don't think he was the best Hannibal Lecter.
You're going to say the first one, aren't you? Or you're going to say Mads Mikkelsen?
No, I don't think Brian Cox was the best. I actually think Mads Mikkelsen in the TV series was the best. Maybe because he had more time to develop it and he wasn't just stuck behind a cell like Anthony Hopkins was. But I think Mads Mikkelsen's probably the best interpretation of Hannibal.
I mean, let's be honest though, season 1 of Hannibal is better than season 2.
Well, it's better. No, I mean nothing could be worse than season 3. Is because there's 3 seasons.
There's Hannibal. 3 seasons where he's ends up in France, and then like it got cancelled after, which was so annoyed.
It was diabolically bad. But I mean, season 1 is superb. Absolutely
brilliant.
From everything from the cinematography, production design, performance, everything was superb. in that one. But yeah, the third season was just not even worth talking about, really. But I mean, Silence of the Lambs is a classic, and that is a horror film.
Yeah, I would classify it as a horror film for sure.
Yeah,
Definitely.
but I mean, horror is such a massive
Well, you
genre.
read it there.
Horror is such a massive genre that, you know, you got things that are horror adjacent. You know, you've got things that are horror but are not necessarily considered horror by mainstream horror fans, but are considered horror by mainstream fans that are not fans of horror, if that makes sense. So the horror genre that's why I love the horror genre, because it's so massive and you can explore every aspect of the human condition inside of horror. And I think other genres, you can't necessarily do that. Maybe sci-fi you can as well. Sci-fi is another genre where you can explore so much about humanity. Whereas a drama, you know, something that's just set up as a drama film you know, it's kind of got that pattern that you kind of have to follow, otherwise people lose interest in whatever it is that we're doing. But whereas horror, you can kind of be funky and you can be creative. You can work with Lovecraftian formats. You can, you know, work with Poe. You can work with English authors. You can work with whatever, and you can make it a serious drama film, but also make it horror, like, you know, The Witch, for example, which I think is an incredible horror film. But that would people would consider, or Hereditary, where people would consider these horror adjacent. But for me, they're true, what I call true horror, like real mental horror that really messes with your mind when you watch it. I mean, Hereditary freaked me out for days after watching it. What a film! What film?
Yeah, I like that one. We've taken up so much of your time. I do want to end with one last question, if you don't mind. We've started to broach this, and I want to make sure I get everybody's opinion here. Lauren and I, we kind of started the idea of doing this podcast together because I hate the sound of my voice, so I was against it for a while. I know I talk a lot for someone that hates the sound of his voice, so I apologize. But we both have friends that do not like horror movies. They're like, we don't watch horror movies. We don't want to be scared. We don't want to this. We don't want this. And we actually had this conversation in her back garden one night, and we started talking about movies that you would recommend to people that don't like those. If you wanted to get people into horror movies, besides having them watch the Foreboding, before your movie, but like if you wanted to get them in something that's out there, what would you recommend someone that doesn't like horror movies to watch?
Wow, that's a great question. That's a brilliant question. I suppose it depends on the person. I've got loads of friends that actually are not into horror. I've got loads of people that, you know, I grew up with, my dad hates horror. He absolutely cannot stand horror. Whereas my mum is a complete horror nut, and that's where I got it from. So I would say probably for me, Don't Look Now.
Ooh.
And the reason why I'd say Don't Look Now is because Don't Look Now is essentially a story about a couple dealing with grief. And it's about them trying to rekindle that love and that connection with each other that they've lost because they've lost a child. And I think as an audience, anyone can relate to loss. Anyone can relate to disconnection from someone that they used to love. But Don't Look Now does that really good thing that flips the horror slowly on you and reveals it towards that kind of real impactful ending, which is left quite ambiguous as well. So because it's not filled with blood and guts, you know, you don't have to worry about, if you're worried about gore, you don't have to worry, because Don't Look Now is not that. But Don't Look Now really is a masterpiece of storytelling. Like, you wouldn't. I say this to anyone that's into film, is if you haven't seen Don't Look Now yet, you haven't seen the first true film. For me, that is a masterpiece, an absolute masterpiece.
Amazing film. That is an amazing suggestion.
What do you guys think?
Yeah, go on, Peter.
Yeah.
It will be tough to beat that, because Don't
was
Look
gonna
Now is
say-
one of my favorites.
Yeah, don't know if I could quite top that one. That is a good suggestion, actually. Yeah, I can't think of any off the top of my head, but I think Kemal's right. I think, you know, blood and gore and all that probably isn't the best to start with, to be honest. I mean, you get some slashers that are quite fun, obviously, like the Scream movies and that. It depends, like Kemal said, it depends on the person. It depends what you're looking for, I suppose. I mean, there's a wide selection out there, so there's any option you can go to, really.
On the fence.
Yeah.
He's in Switzerland. He's on the fence.
I mean, you know, this is a bit of a stupid one, right? Because I know it's not a horror, but when you think about it, it's a bit horrific. But The Mask is when you think about it, it's actually horrific, but it's one of the The Mask is one of the greatest films ever created. And I will die on this hill right now. Okay, I have the comic and everything, and you know what? The comic is so brutal. I like if they ever like made another Mask film, like with the age rating it should have had, I think it would have been made as a horror and not a comedy.
Okay.
Or if they're into more like taking the mick out of horror things, Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah.
You know?
Love that movie.
Like,
That's a great
That's a
suggestion.
good one. That's
yeah,
really
see,
good.
I'm young, but I got brains. It's
See,
your old-
and you'll appreciate this as Doctor Who. You mentioned Doctor Who, and I'm a
Oh, yeah.
huge Doctor Who fan as well. My daughter was she wanted to watch horror, but I didn't know at the time. She was my oldest, and I was like, I don't know where to start. And it's my daughter, and blah blah blah. We started with Don't Blink, the David Tennant.
legendary.
Yep. And then we also so I'm a Doctor Who fan from Billy Piper on. Like the reincarnation of Doctor Who. And I've started to go back in the older ones. And then there was also one, and I can't think of the name of it, but it was with Matt Smith, and they're in this it's a dream haunted house, like a hotel.
Oh,
I forget the
Dollhouse.
name of the episode.
Oh,
Yes.
Dollhouse
The
was
kid, the
bad.
kid who was like, you're in his head, I think it was. It's been a while since I've seen it, but I started them with that. When she was okay with that, then we started going down, and then to the point where we have the top 100 horror movie poster that you scratch off when you see it. So we've gone through Exorcist and It Follows and Rosemary's Baby, and we're about 80 out of the
Rosemary's
100. So
How did I miss Rosemary's Baby?
I was actually just thinking that. It's a really
Also
good
another
film.
one. That's also another one I'd recommend to non-horror fans, because it's not a traditional horror film. It's actually, and especially in this day and age, I think it's very progressively for the female experience and the female journey that's happening now. I think it was way ahead of its time. Way ahead of its time. Rosemary's Baby is incredible.
I think like a really, really good horror film, I think it's classed as horror, is Kathy Bates in Misery. That's
Yeah, her performance is
it. I mean, to be fair, Kathy Bates, I wouldn't want to see her in a dark alley because I think she might be nuts. That film generally like makes me go, oh god, maybe not.
certainly won't want to see her at the end of your bed. That's what you
No,
want.
absolutely not.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's great.
those
That's
are amazing. That honestly, I think those are really good films as well to end
Yeah.
on. I know we've taken a lot of your time, so I just,
Yeah.
on behalf of Chris and I, thank you guys so much. This
Yes.
has been so much fun. We are really excited about your film. We'll see it. Anybody who's around, go to see it on Horror on Sea, but definitely watch these names because you will see them again for sure.
100%.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for having us on. It's been good fun.
Yeah, thank you. It's been really, really cool.
Thanks. And thank you all for listening. We'll see you next month on the London Horror Movie Club.
If you want to share your thoughts about this episode, please head to our Facebook or YouTube pages. We're grateful to Kukurbit, who made our music. Thank you for listening, and please join us next time for the London Horror Movie Club.